What's up, trainers? My name is Net, and we're taking a look at our 4th round battle in the Draft Classic Junior Division between my home team, Ecruteak Firebirds, versus fellow competitor, Nashville Nidokings. First, a quick recap of our competitors. Returning from 3 back-to-back weeks of victories is sand-rushing Ecruteak Firebirds, eager to defend their streak. Last week saw a more mild game versus circumstance more than anything, but the Firebirds are not discouraged. This week is versus a powerful challenger with a diverse pool of Pokemon that he can combine in any way to bring an unpredictable offense. Predictability being a problem creeping into the back of my mind, this week would need to see a shakeup in brings and a stronger focus on techs than ever before, if the Firebirds hope to ever seize the element of surprise. The Nashville Nidokings have come to challenge the Firebirds, having just secured victory in last week's match versus Pokeboy and hungry for a consecutive W. The Nidokings are known for creating a strong defense and slapping down crippling status on their opponents before sweeping with their offensive headliners. Breaking out onto the field with massive water-based offense is atrocious Gyarados, with a powerful hidden ability Moxie in its back pocket to increase its threatening presence as it takes knockouts. Along with fellow intimidator Landorus Therian, the Nidokings already have 2 massive answers to my primary win con. A pair of mythical Pokemon make their way onto the Nidokings' ranks in Jirachi and Shaman, 2 powerful threats that make short work of opponents with huge attacks, massive recovery, and the fearsome Serene Grace ability. Complementing this already massive roster are powerhouse Goliaths Emboar, Mega Altaria, and Rhyperior, who help check a wide range of types. Shoring up this team with huge defense are Pokemon like Grimmsnarl and Slowking, offering prankster screens or huge stats made larger by Calm Mind. A truly massive team, this was no doubt going to be a difficult week. This week's prep was a marathon of changes that were being made even up into the last hour. The difficulty in making any sort of prediction on a team like the Nidokings is that just about any combination of the 12 could be made and the results still be a threat. The added wrinkle this week is the crippling ability known on the streets as Intimidate, which was in abundance on the Nidokings' headlining offensive picks. And so, trickery had to be done. Let's take a look at the picks. What week wouldn't be complete without featuring the wonderful Excadrill? Returning once more alongside its sand-streaming brother is the powerful Mole, ready this week with a fully offensive move pool designed to keep bringing the pain. A no-nonsense Jolly EV spread of full attack and speed stats complement a move pool of Earthquake, Iron Head, Cross Scissor, and Rock Slide. These 4 moves offered coverage on almost all of the Nidokings' team, even powerful water-type tank Slowking. A Life Orb, naturally, found itself onto the drill this week. Tyranitar is back, and better than ever with a surprising Choice Scarf set designed to break offensive headlining Gyarados and Landorus. The massive Rock Dark type features an Impish Nature set with enough speed to stay ahead of an unscarfed Jirachi, and enough defense and HP investment to tank a Waterfall from a Gyarados at +1. Stone Edge, Crunch, Iron Tail, and Ice Punch give this monster the range it needs to swiftly deal with any opposing threat. Goodra has finally returned to the roster this week. Like in its previous outing versus Waterloo Wailords, this powerful special defensive wall has been given an assault vest to withstand an onslaught of special damage from the likes of Slowking, Shaman, and Jolteon, while delivering versatile damage with a set of Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Surf, and Dragon Tail. Full special attack and HP investment on this modest dragon gave it the staying power it needs to act as a pivot both offensively and defensively. Goodra's selection this week was made primarily on the utility of the mighty Sap Sipper ability, creating an option immune to Shaman's Seed Flare, Leech Seed, and Giga Drain. Duraludon is an exciting new addition to this week's roster, making its debut appearance and securing a knockout in its very first showing. This Steel Dragon behemoth can be seen as the physically defensive counterpart to its cousin Goodra, having been brought to this week's match to soak huge damage from Gyarados, Jirachi, and Altaria, while delivering huge special damage. This timid set was given full defense investment with enough speed to stay ahead of Jolly Gyarados. The held item this week was a special tech, Eject Pack, designed to make Duraludon the perfect lead for this week's match. Thunderbolt, Body Press, Flash Cannon, and Draco Meteor complete this week's set. Returning defensive champion Tapu Fini brings its lovely Misty terrain onto this week's battlefield, with a set not unlike versions seen in previous weeks. This week saw Fini provide more than just defense, this time being brought as a specific counter to possible roadblock Dusclops, with Fini almost dedicated to dismantling the Ghost type. Knockoff, Taunt, Surf, and Moonblast make Fini's set this week, designed to prevent setup Pokemon from becoming too large to handle, or remove damage reduction berries that could end Excadrill's sweep. Lastly, the powerful Rotom Wash returns this week to drop crippling burns with Will-O-Wisp and maintain offensive momentum with Volt Switch. This timid set maximizes defense and invests enough speed to stay ahead of Emboar and Rhyperior, as well as possible Adamant Gyarados and Altaria. Hydro Pump and Defog complete the Levitator set. Rotom serves not only as a hard check against threats like Rhyperior, Landorus, and Gyarados, but gives this team the critical pivot it needs to stay ahead of the opponent's offense. It was my opinion that a majority of this battle would come down to who possessed the better lead. While I would have loved to come right out of the gate with offense, the presence of Intimidate made that impossible, especially on Pokemon like the Nidokings offense, who benefit from excellent type combinations that interrupt my sweep. While Feeney may have been my go-to lead in a few weeks now, the threat of Jolteon, Emboar, Shaman, and Jirachi made the Water Fairy too much of a risk. I needed something with the right type advantage and defensive bulk to stand up to the whole of the Nidokings team, be unaffected by Intimidate, and put pressure on likely leads Gyarados or Grimmsnarl. Enter Duraludon. I have been looking forward to using this Pokemon since week 1. And, with the helpful Eject pack, guaranteed that from turn 1, I would be in control of this game's momentum. From there, it was just a matter of dropping the right Pokemon in at the right time until Excadrill was ready to go to town. With the team set and battle plan in mind, we head out onto the green. Just from the initial lineup, I could already tell that Slowking was going to be a Trick Room set thanks to the presence of Rhyperior, having the slowest speed among all the Pokemon on the lineup. Shaman there made me pretty happy to see since I brought Goodra to invalidate a majority of its set, and the rest of the team was about what I expected. This very physically offensive team was going to bring Intimidators and strong typings against my Sandrush squad. So just from turn 1, the Eject Pack tech already pays off. The Lando T lead I had thought might happen, so Duraludon is able to pivot out and bring Rotom Wash in, which will be this Pokemon's direct counter for the remainder of this game. I am pretty much just going to be trying to slap burns on everything. Since most of his party is physically offensive, the burn is going to be crippling on them, and he has no way of removing it, aside of course from the natural cure on this Shaman. Shaman is going to try to Giga Drain the Rotom, but Goodra of course is going to Sap Sipper that, and it just tanks everything this Shaman can possibly throw at it. 20% is the most that it's going to be able to hit with a Dazzling Gleam, so that's 5 attacks minimum with perfect math. Ice Beam of course just rips its HP to shreds. A second Ice Beam comes out and freezes this Slowking, which at first I'm thinking, oh, that's unfortunate, typical me with the freeze hacks, but he doesn't thaw out, he retreats. Into Jirachi, which is fine. I think it's a little bit of unnecessary damage on the Jirachi, but it's smart to bring in an offensive Pokemon against Goodra, who's not as physically defensive. Of course, Iron Head's going to go into Rotom, who quad resists Steel. So Jirachi, I figure out right here, is Choice Scarfed, because otherwise I think he'd have just U-turned. And Burn goes back on to Shaman, who Natural Cured the previous Burn away. Like I say, status is status. It's not really that big of a deal. Of course, he's pretty smart in Dazzling Gleams anyway. He knows that any grass attack's just going to be absorbed by Goodra. Goodra, of course, tanks these Dazzling Gleams one after another before finally landing a final Ice Beam onto Shaman. Thanks to the burn damage, Shaman went down in 2 Ice Beams instead of 3. Landorus, of course, threatens Goodra out of the active, back into Rotom, who is here to attempt a burn once more. He's very smart. He doesn't go for Earthquake. He knows that Rotom's going to come back in, so he attempts a Stone Edge, which misses. I mean, I've been there too. Stone Edge never connects. Slowking mates Rotom in the active. I'm not 100% certain that he doesn't have Scald, and I really don't want to burn on Rotom right now because he doesn't have leftovers. He just has Rindo Berry. So instead I go into Tapu Fini to eliminate that possibility and knock off whatever item is on this thing. If it's Assault Vest, it just makes it easier to KO. Moonblast is just going to keep coming out. I figure that if this thing thaws eventually, by the time it does, it's just not going to have the offensive power to threaten Fini, even if it does have a lightning type attack. It of course thaws. The first thing it does is Trick Room, which I'm going to be perfectly honest here, I don't really think benefits this team too much in this matchup. I mean, he's already faster than a majority of my Pokemon the rest of his squad, so now you're just being outsped against Pokemon that have type advantage over you. Regardless, the Rhyperior enters the active and does massive damage to this Fini, who's going to be able to resist the Earthquake, but still takes so much damage from this massive Pokemon. The knockoff comes on. I really wasn't sure what kind of Rhyperior I was dealing with. I think Monk says it best. I'm just stuck in VGC mode. I'm thinking this thing is like weakness policy or something. And so I send Rotom out there to stall out the Trick Room turns before Goodra is dropped into the active to just clean this thing up with a Surf. I've got nothing left to fear from this guy. And of course, Goodra has already done so beautifully. It's taken out Shaman, which was its whole purpose. It got the added benefit of taking out Rhyperior. So I just let Landorus take it out so I can get the free switch into Tyranitar here to get Sandstream damage going. And then, bop, here is a Choice Scarfed Ice Punch for an immediate knockout, which took Ant, I think, by surprise. And I was happy to see that. It kind of just, the plan is coming together. Fini, of course, comes out here, and the reason for this, there's a couple reasons. I need Tyranitar to reset choice items. It wasn't time for Duraludon to come out because I wanted to know if this thing had Earthquake, which he's going to Power Whip. I mean, smart, like, why not? It does neutral damage to Fini. Earthquake wouldn't have, so I don't think he'd use it there. But he gets the Moxie bonus. Duraludon comes out. I'm not faster than him, but I can tank a Waterfall at, like, I could tank a Waterfall at about +5. Earthquake, of course, would have one-hit killed me, but he didn't bring it, which is fortunate for me. And of course, the Misty Terrain is going to prevent this Ice Fang from dealing any damage while I blow through the Wackenberry with one Thunderbolt and then clean this Gyarados up with a second. Duraludon has been fantastic in this matchup, by the way. So Sand has expired because Tyranitar is Choice Scarfed instead of Smooth Rock this time. So I resume the Sandstorm because I know this Jirachi is Scarfed. I don't know how fast this Jirachi is Scarfed. I don't know if he speed creeped it at all. So I leave Tyranitar in hoping to get a Crunch just to end the game here. Of course, he outspeeds me and flinches me. Tyranitar really didn't need to stay in this turn at all. I kind of just sack him for no reason here, which is a little frustrating. I could have brought Excadrill in, resisted the damage, and then just done Earthquake on the next turn. But regardless, Excadrill does come in, cleans up Jirachi with an Earthquake, and seals this game for the Firebirds. I have many, many notes for this match, both pretty positive and a little critical. My goal with these post-coms is to try my best to put my Bruno lenses on and find improvement. Building on success is one thing, but even in victory, there's always small failures that I want to try to address myself before it's complemented by outside critique. So let's dive in. First things first, my lead. This was my eureka moment of the week, and it is something that I am personally very, very proud of. I explained earlier that Duraludon just nailed all the criteria for what a lead against Ant's team needed to possess, and slapping Eject Pack on him essentially meant that there was a positive course of action against all 12 of his Pokemon. I won't go into every scenario, but essentially, if the lead was an Intimidator, I eject and drop a counter that won't be at -1. If the lead is a setup mon or a non-Intimidator offensive lead, I have move coverage for each of those Pokemon and can sit in the active. If the lead threatens a one-hit KO, I Draco Meteor and pray it connects and swap to a defensive pivot, Duraludon being able to outspeed all of Ant's direct counters to it. In literally no version of this battle would I not be in control of first turn momentum. I simply had to ride the wave to an Excadrill sweep. The next thing on my mind is predictability. I mentioned this earlier, but the same tricks every week will eventually stop working. 3 weeks in a row, I have brought a primarily supportive Tyranitar and Stoutland with nearly the same hold-forward moveset. Smooth Rock for additional sand turns is never a bad thing, but it does narrow the possibilities of the Behemoth Pseudo-Legendary. Tyranitar has gigantic stats. A ton of weaknesses, yes. But weaknesses don't mean anything if the opponent is already knocked out. It was time to do something different, and the changeup paid off spectacularly. Stoutland was too obvious in this match. I bring the doggo in against Landorus, and the thing will flee from Ice Fang without a second thought. I drop Tyranitar in front of Landorus, and the bait is nearly too good to resist. 3 weeks of Tyranitar setting up sand, stones, and nothing else would lead anyone to believe I do the same thing here, especially when Gyarados is sitting in the back waiting to take huge Stealth Rocks damage. My opponent thinks they're not falling for the wrong trap. The Scarf set also pays off for the Duraludon set. By dropping Tyranitar in front of Gyarados on turn 1, I get an easy first turn KO assuming Stone Edge doesn't miss. Thunder Punch was an option, but I removed it from the set because Wackenberry was too obvious when I have Rotom and Vikavolt ready to go, and my opponent has 2 excellent ground type switches and a Volt Absorb Jolteon. The cherry on top of this set is that thanks to the Scarf, I'm free to invest heavily into defense, meaning Tyranitar, even against a +1 Gyarados, can't be knocked out in one shot. Tyranitar this week was excellent. Lastly, a few words of praise for Goodra. Ant had to bring Shaman. Full disclosure, I guessed 5 of the 6 Pokemon he brought this week, but prepped for all 12. My guess was that he'd bring the team he brought minus Jirachi and plus Dusclops to make the most of the Trick Room set on Slowking. Shaman complements that extremely well, being both physically offensive to counter a number of my Pokemon, as well as being Grass type with access to Giga Drain to stop Excadrill dead in its tracks. Goodra dismantles not only Shaman, but nearly all of the rest of the Trick Room set thanks to its ridiculous coverage. Was Assault Vest predictable? Absolutely, but it's the right kind of predictable. The kind of terrifying predictable that perhaps Ant has a difficult choice to make in narrowing his movesets to deal with it, instead of handling the actual threat this match, which is Excadrill's overwhelming physical offense and coverage against 80% of his team. I probably thought too hard about this, but the TLDR is that Sap Sipper goes Slurp. There are a couple things about this match, however, that bother me. First, the differential. Near the end of the game, I let Tyranitar go down to flinch Rachi, hoping to power through the Iron Head and finish the game with a crunch at a +3 differential. I did this because I knew for a fact that Excadrill was going to knock out that Jirachi. There was absolutely no doubt about that. But for some reason, I didn't bring Excadrill in as soon as I could have. Iron Head on Scarf Jirachi only does about 20% to Excadrill, and the Wish Pokemon doesn't have a chance in hell of outspeeding the Mole in Sand. So I let Tyranitar faint for no reason, the second time this season. That's probably my biggest personal gripe with my performance this week, and I'll need to pay more attention in the latter half of this draft. And in a similar way, I let Feeny go down versus Gyarados, but that was more by design as I wanted Misty Terrain to eliminate any possibility that Status Karma come back to bite me. And this segues pretty nicely into my second issue, Ant's movesets. I understand Ice Fang on Gyarados, sort of. But Gyara needs Earthquake to break through Steel types and hit neutrally against foes that resist Waterfall. This match could have been very different if he had brought Earthquake on the atrocious Pokemon. It doesn't guarantee that he would win, Excadrill still has Rock Slide flinch, but would have certainly brought me closer to defeat. And also, Scald. Freeze Hacks on Slowking was just trademark me, but Slowking runs Scald. It always runs Scald. And not seeing it here is what allowed me to sleep at night, because that thing being frozen for that long was really both our faults. Thank goodness. Ant played a wonderful game, and I am very grateful for the exciting match this week. I am so glad I was able to break loose and wow the crowd with some fun techs and surprising sets that were only possible and necessary because of how stacked and scary the Nidokings roster truly is. My congratulations goes out to my opponent, and I hope to see his team continue to climb the ladder, and maybe even thaw themselves out of freeze sometime in the future.